Hey everyone, welcome back to Citywide Bytes. I'm your host, Max Bowen. Picture this: it's 1,000 years in the future, and Earth has become a dying world. The ocean itself is a deadly predator, luring and devouring anyone that gets close to it. That's the opening for Exo, the debut sci fi novel by Colin Brush. In this episode, Colin's going to talk about what the Caul is, his protagonist, Mae Jameson, and the task before her, and the possibility of a second book. Colin, to start things off, why don't you walk us through what EXO is all about?
Yeah, sure. So Exo is set about 1,000 years from now, when the Earth has been abandoned, which sounds pretty extreme, but something pretty extreme has happened. Basically, what's happened is that the oceans have basically been transformed into a strange and very, very dangerous liquid entity known as the core. And this is something that basically, if you get close to it, any life form is irresistibly attracted to it, and it just tries to enter it absolutely immediately. It can't stop itself. As soon as it enters, it vanishes and just disappears, and it's just gone. Obviously, we have a lot of ocean on the earth, and but people, there's no way that life is sustainable on the earth. So essentially, humanity is scattered across the solar system in habitats. It's a horrible existence for most people. But on Earth, a few scientists live in bunkers beside the coal. These are known as facilities, and these scientists are trying to figure out what's going on. They're trying to figure out what the coal is, what it's doing, and if there's some way they can stop it. At the same time, when something so extreme has happened to Earth, obviously, this has greatly affected people, and so religions have sprung up around it. Some people think it's God, some people think it's the devil, some call it the adversary, and some of these people try and get to get to Earth. They want to, some of them want to enter the core themselves, and this is all highly illegal, but some people manage to do it. And most of those people, as soon as they arrive on Earth, they will enter the core and disappear. But a few of them, they somehow they somehow resist it, and they kind of create lives for themselves in the remains of the Earth, beside the core, and these are called penitents. One such penitent is the protagonist of the story, the main protagonist, Mae Jameson, and she's an 81-year-old ex-cop. Now, she didn't worship the call. She didn't come here kind of willingly. Her husband came here, and she followed him. And this was 30 years ago, but she couldn't find him. She lost any kind of trail that he left behind, and she's been wandering these shores for 30 years alone. And one day she finds this small child that can't speak, alone by the shore. She knows this child. She knows the child's father. He's a rogue scientist called Carl Magellan. And May has spent all her time alone. She can't be bothered with this child, but she realizes she's going to have to deal with it. So she takes this girl back to her father's camp. But when she gets there, she discovers that the father's dead. He's hanging from a noose. Now, May's an ex-cop. She looks at this man hanging from a noose, and she thinks, I don't think this man killed himself. I think I was supposed to think this man killed himself. And now she's got this dilemma. First, she's got this child that now needs looked after, and there's no one else nearby. And secondly, there's a murder that someone has tried to make it look like a suicide. And the story is essentially is May trying to look after this child, and trying to find out who killed Magellan. At the same time, she discovers that Magellan left 9 years worth of journals, about his time on Earth, about his attempts to uncover the secrets of the Call. And the story is both Magellan's story and May's story as they try and figure out what happened, and who is kind of using the Call, or using what they think the Call might be, to try and reshape the future of humanity.
That is an amazing story. Just like reading about this, I was really, really drawn in. No pun intended there. But I want to ask you, what about the world building? I mean, how long does it take to create the world of EXO before you even began writing it?
So, well, it's funny. A lot of it came to me on in 2004 on a visit to quite nearby where I live. I live in Hastings on the south coast of England. But that's now. But I lived in London at the time, and I was visiting a place called Dungeness, which is this kind of small triangle of land that juts out into the English Channel. And it was I found it an extraordinary place. Um, it's a pebbled landscape. It has a fishing fleet where the boats are literally just dragged on and off the beach using tractors or bulldozers or winches. They just drag these boats up and down the beach. There are all these wooden shacks dotted around the place. Um, and there are a couple of lighthouses, one called Old Lighthouse, which is the Victorian one, and one called New Lighthouse, which is the more modern one, helpfully. And at the end of right at the very end, is a huge nuclear power station. And I just saw this, and and the weather is, quite often when you visit there, it's just cloudy and very windy. And I just felt like this, I turned up at the end of the world. Um, and in my mind, the fishing boats became sort of discarded rockets. One of the lighthouses became a temple. The nuclear power station became a facility that was uh, studying something. And the other thing, as I say, it's a triangle of land that juts into the sea. So the sea's kind of on two sides of you, and you're utterly you feel kind of under siege to some extent. And all these elements kind of just came together in my head. And they and you know they I wrote it all down, and then I just sort of came up with a plot that seemed to sort of help me tell the story of this place.
Yeah. And looking at the cover for the book, you definitely get that bleak, like apocalyptic scenario there. You have this massive overcast clouds, one person running into the distance. Was the cover like the first thing that you had, or did you have to play around with some different ideas?
No, that was quite late on. As I say, it was I sent the cover designer for my publisher. I sent them various ideas for pictures essentially of Dungeness that I've got, and said, look, this is what the place looks like. I don't know what you think. And there was a couple of book covers I quite liked. I said I quite like those, and they just did their own thing. But I was completely blown away by it. I think it perfectly captures the book.
It really
Um,
does. And like the old saying goes, you don't judge a book by its cover, but the cover I think is what can sell the book. You see the book, you see the cover, you think, oh wow, this is great. I'm at least gonna like take a look see. So,
yeah,
great job on that one. And I gotta say, I really want to check out Dungeness now. Just after hearing, it's like I
oh,
want to see this place. See what it
yeah,
looks like.
yeah.
Um,
It's an astonishing place. It's an astonishing place.
yeah, yeah. So, how did this grow from just an idea you had at this beach to the final product? Like, what was the process of just developing the plot for you?
So, well, so it was 2004 when I first sort of came up with, I went there and I actually came up with the idea, and I just played around with it on and off for until about 2018. I didn't really write very much of the novel. I just had some ideas which I'd occasionally look at. I spent most of the other time writing other things that didn't really go anywhere in the end. And then I just thought, I'm going to sit down and write this. So I did, and my my agent took it out in 2021, and we had lots of sort of interest, but no one really wanted to buy it particularly. And then when one editor said to me, because it was initially when I wrote it, it was set on an alien planet. That's how end of the world I was feeling. I felt I didn't feel like it was Earth initially, and somebody said, "Why is it not set on Earth?" And my agent said to me, "Why not?" So I spent a year and I cut a third of the story out. I rewrote the other half. I wrote half of it, and then I totally rewrote half of it, and then so we had this new book set on Earth, and that was, and that feels like it really unlocked something. I think the sense of you now got a story that had a lot more heft, because obviously if it's set on Earth and you've got another kind of apocalyptic situation, and it's all about the oceans changing and so forth. It's you can't really avoid these sort of subjects that we spend our time thinking about as well.
Yeah, I think it definitely gives a book a lot more punch that it's on Earth, because certainly, these days, of course, we are concerned about the environment and the notion of someday it may not be habitable anymore. So I think it's like it definitely carries, I think, a little more weight than if it's on some just alien planet. But I do want to ask, did like current events, did like the science of the environment really give you ideas for this?
Uh, yeah, I mean, certainly. I think it's yeah, I think the big thing for me is I grew up on an island. In the English Channel, there's a small island called Jersey, which is 5 miles by 9 miles, and I grew up there, and you're surrounded by water. It's on every side. It completely controls what comes in and what goes out. You know, if it's too rough, the planes can't fly, and the boats don't come in, and the shelves just empty. So you're very very aware of how important the ocean is. It controls your destiny, and I grew up with that until I was 18, and then I moved over to the mainland in the United Kingdom. But that's always stayed with me. That sense of the power of it. And the other thing also about it, this might sound a bit strange, is that whenever you look at the sea, the ocean, or a lake or anything like that, you're only seeing the surface of it. You're only seeing it in two dimensions. You can't see the depth, and that also struck me as and it was, I don't know if if you're ever swimming in the sea and you go out of your depth and you look down, you can't see your feet or something, just like, oh, you get the frighteners that a little bit, and it's
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to get to some extent with the call as well. Is just this, just how terrifying in many respects the sea is, even though obviously it's utterly vital to us too.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like about the ocean, like you said, it covers like two-thirds of the planet. There's parts that we have not even come close to exploring. There's such a vastness to it, and
Yes.
it does seem endless at times. You're like if you're like on a boat, you're out there in the ocean, and you can't see the land. That's it. The ocean is your like new world, basically. So it
Yeah.
does. I definitely get the sense of like just the vastness of the place. But I want to narrow things down to talking about Mae Jameson. She is our main character. She's 81, as you mentioned. What's the purpose of having an older protagonist? Because you don't always see that. Usually they're a bit younger.
Yeah, yeah. So when I started working on it, I was a much younger person, and I wanted to write somebody who's the polar opposite to me. I just thought the Magellan character, the scientist, is much more like me, I suppose. Um, he thinks he knows everything, and he's a typical kind of male of a certain persuasion who just thinks, oh yeah, and just blunders through the world and think the world is at his convenience. And I wanted to write someone where the world has not been at her convenience. So she's an orphan. She doesn't know who her parents are, and she's tried to make a life for herself, but she's been kind of battered here and there by the kind of by fortune, and then she's ultimately she's ended up on Earth, which is the last place she wanted to be. But she has this sense of she has a sense of sort of justice that is really hugely important to her. And as the book opens, she's kind of lost her humanity, and her story is of her regaining humanity by trying to protect this child and discover what happened to her father, essentially. And that's what really kind of drove me to write May, and to write someone who felt very very different from me as well. I thought that would be a real challenge. I mean, let alone this. We're setting the book 1,000 years from now.
Yeah. Aside from that, right? Aside from that, how about the girl that she finds? Does she have a real big role in the story? Kind of what's her purpose for being introduced?
So, well, Siofra is she is when May finds her, you just think, okay, this is May just thinks it's like, okay, there's this little girl. It's just that she's just a side issue really for the real problem here, which is Magellan being murdered, and there might be murderers around that I need to be careful about. But as the story develops, you get more of a sense that actually, where does Siofra come from? That Magellan had a wife at some point who Gemma, who disappeared, and she's Siofra's mother, and their story, which comes out in Magellan's journals. You start to realize quite how important Siofra actually is, and that Magellan has kind of known this all along, but has sort of refused to admit it because he's done something quite bad.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Now, one thing I read is that his book is written in the dual timeline approach. What is this approach and why'd you use it? How does it sort of shape the story?
So yeah, so when I really like the idea of setting the story over a 9 or 10 day period, a very short period, and so the chapters wouldn't be chapter one, chapter two; they'd be day one, day two, day three, after some particular event. So there's an event that happens on day zero, and then everything that happens is kind of a consequence of that. But at the same time, when I wanted to tell Magellan's story through his journals, I thought, well, I'll just have year one, year two. So he'll just be writing his journals over the years, and it felt there's just like a nice kind of structure that could dovetail throughout the book. And then what happens is then May read some of the journals and not in the right order because some of them are missing and things like that. So then the nice neat structure gets messed up a bit. But that felt like it was quite helped kind of give the novel a bit of a kick at various
I
points as
like
well.
that. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like books that don't necessarily go from like, A, B, C, D all the way to the end. There's sometimes a different approach.
Yeah.
Um, Now you are far from new to the writing world. You have worked for years as a bookseller, a proofreader, a copywriter, a quarterly zine publisher, an ad copywriter, a publishing blurb writer. Holy God, that's a lot of stuff. um, does this kind of help you to write your first book?
Oh, I think if it helped me, I've been doing this for 20, I've been trying to write a novel and get it published for 25 years. So I feel it's probably been a hindrance for somebody else.
Really,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, I've worked for Penguin Books for 25 years, and my main job is writing the jacket copy on books. I've written over 5,000 book blurbs in my time, and where what I'm doing is I'm doing the opposite. Whereas I'm turning somebody's 100,000 word novel into 150 words.
Hmm.
And so actually writing the novel was the entire opposite process of turning a few hundred words of notes into 100,000 word novel. And it's a very different process, it turns out.
Right. It definitely is. But here we are. We're at the end. The book is set to be released on November 18th, which is, you can be thrilled because we're like not even like we're like a little over a month away at the time of this recording.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, your first book is gonna be out there for the whole world to see. What's kind of going through your head as you get ready for this?
Is I think because I've been living with it in some ways for so long, it's just I'm so glad to get it out there and just see what people think. Had a couple of nice trade reviews so far, which is good. So you're just thinking, how are people? Am I just completely wrong about this, or am I right about this? But they've mostly said things that I think the book's about. So it's like, oh, so I'm not totally deluded. So that's good.
How are you when it comes to like reading reviews? Do you approach it like, okay, let's see, or is it more like, okay, let's see what they did?
I don't mind. You know what? When I, as a copywriter, I spend all my time with, going back to the client, which is usually the editor or even the author sometimes, where they hate it or they've got a better idea, or and I'm kind of, yes, it hurts initially. Always it hurts because you've got it wrong, in their eyes,
Okay.
and they're the client, so they're always right. But it's a little bit different this time because there's so many different points of view. I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to probably have. If I'm lucky enough to get any 5-star reviews, how do I cope? How do I marry those with the 1 stars that are bound to come too? It's just like there'll be contradictions, and that's
Yeah, yeah, because like taste is so subjective. Like you
yeah.
can ask 10 people what they think of this one book, and they'll give you 10 different answers. So it's impossible to please everyone.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that there will be more books, or is this it for you?
No, I'm writing something else. So it's funny that because my agent couldn't sell EXO, um, and he got back to me about a year afterwards, after we changed it to selling on Earth, and it was like, oh, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm just writing another science fiction murder mystery. And he was like, yeah, yeah, I really love your stuff, can't sell it.
Oh no,
so,
that's not
so I
great.
went. So I pivoted. I started writing something else, and then a year later he got back and went, "Oh, we sold it."
Yay! All right, great.
So I'm writing something entirely different. Which,
Yeah.
but I'm like, well, fine. Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Do you kind of pay attention to like the book market? Because as someone who like works in it, Do you kind of intentionally
Totally,
like,
totally. I mean,
yeah.
it's utterly transformed. I swear that if I'd written this book 15 years ago, um, uh, and I think we would have probably published it uh, quite straightforwardly, quite quickly, and it'd be fine. But the market, just after the pandemic, the market changed hugely. The only, certainly in Britain, I think it's very similar in the States. The only big growth at the moment in books is in romantasy and cozy crime. Those are absolutely huge at the moment. And the other areas are when you get areas that blossom and things like that, it puts everything else in the shade to some degree. So
Hmm.
it's a really curious time. So yes, I'm very aware of it, but I can't see myself right now writing a romantasy or something like that. But never say never.
It would be quite the shift for you. I gotta say,
Thanks.
Colin, it'd be quite the shift going from like apocalyptic end of the world to nice little romance story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I think that kind of makes sense. You want to write what you want to write, not what the
Yeah.
market wants. Because like next
Mm.
week, maybe it's something else. You never know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, some people are very obstinate. Just go right. I'm going to write against the market, and I think
Yeah.
there's opportunities there as well.
Sure.
I think I'll just try and kind of plow my own fire and see where I go.
There we go. There we go. Do you have a favorite scene in this book?
Oh, do I have a favorite scene? I think yes. I think it's towards the end, and I think it's when uh, it's when May and the child end up kind of going. There are these structures called topology, which are kind of almost like city-like structures, which grew up around the Caul, towards the and I wanted to put them almost inside the Caul, and with the Caul coming in as the tide comes in, and they're in this structure, and they know that they're going. They know that they need to get back out, and it's a sort of point when May realizes that suddenly she's no longer in control, and that this person who has been sort of trying to control everything all the way through and has been trying to solve this mystery and so forth, and she has to put her trust in the child. And
Hmm.
towards the right towards the end, it's she needs the child to sort of lead her out.
I
And I
love
felt,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, folks, we are coming down to the end of this conversation. Colin Brush, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate this.
not at all. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful.
All right. Now, folks, we've told you the whole story. Here's what you gotta do. You go to colinthecopywriter.com. Everything is there. Check out the book again, out on November 18th. Pick up your copy, pre-order it if you can. Pre-order it, get your copy, leave reviews, hopefully 5 stars, but be honest, but reviews, we like them. They, get the author out there, follow the socials, of course. And thank you once again, everyone, for checking out this show. This has been Citywide Bytes. I'm your host, Max Bone, and I'll see you all next time.